Hi there, I'm Avon. At Christmas, my sister stood up, clinked her glass, and said, "We voted and cut you off." Everyone nodded, smiled, like it was nothing. But the part no one saw? The years they drained my bank account behind closed doors. The therapy I paid for. The wedding I funded. The hospital scare that turned out to be a lie. And just when I finally walked away, they came back, asking for help. How did I go from being not family to being their only lifeline? You ever wonder what happens when you stop being the family fixer and start being the one who says enough? Let me show you. I showed up with a bottle of Cabernet, one of the nice ones from my stash. I even wrapped it with a bow like an idiot, like I believed this year would be different. The porch light at Rosen's place flickered once as I rang the bell. The smell of pine and cinnamon hit me as the door creaked open and Mom's voice carried through the hallway. "Avon's here," she sang out, fake cheer dripping off every syllable. Inside, the house looked like a Hallmark card. Warm lights, crackling fire, the whole thing. Neva was by the tree, shaking a box with her name on it. My father didn't bother getting up from the recliner. Rosine smiled like we were on camera. "You're early," she said. "Must be nice having no kids and no real responsibilities." I smiled politely and placed the wine on the table. "Better early than dramatic," I said, trying to sound playful, but she didn't laugh. Dinner was already set. Carved ham, roasted vegetables, perfectly folded napkins. Rosen always knew how to stage a picture-perfect disaster. I took my seat near the end of the table. Small talk buzzed like a bad radio station. Static, tension, half-hearted chuckles. No one asked how I'd been. No one mentioned my promotion last quarter. It was clear they were just waiting for something. And then it happened. Rosine stood up, wineglass in hand, wearing that lipstick she only used when she wanted to win. "Before we cut the pie," she said, "I think it's time we got honest." I looked up. My stomach turned before she even finished the sentence. She glanced around the table like a smug senator. "We voted, and we've decided you're no longer part of this family." I blinked. At first, I thought I misheard her, or maybe she was joking. But Mom nodded in agreement. "It was bound to happen sooner or later," she said, buttering her roll. Cale stared at his plate, silent. Tolliver clinked his fork against his wineglass. "It's for your own good." Neva giggled. She thought it was a game. And my dad? He didn't even meet my eyes. Just shifted in his chair and muttered, "This kind of tension isn't healthy." I felt like I had left my body. Their words didn't pierce me like knives. It was colder than that, like standing outside in a storm with no coat, no one coming to let you in. I stayed quiet for a moment, forcing myself to breathe. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a thick folder. Their laughter stopped. The sound it made when I set it on the table was sharp. Paper meeting wood, with a dull thump that cut deeper than any curse. "What's that?" Rosine asked, the smirk twitching at the corners of her mouth. I leaned back. "Since we're being honest, I figured I'd come prepared." She grabbed it like she expected confetti to fly out. Her fingers flipped through the pages, one by one. The smile drained from her face. Bank transfers. Receipts. Email screenshots. A list of every time they called, texted, begged. A timeline that screamed what I'd swallowed for years. Then she hit page 23. A hotel bill from Charleston. 2 nights. 1 room. Signed with her name and someone else's. Lena. She shoved the folder away like it was covered in filth. "You psychopath," she hissed. "You've been spying?" I didn't flinch. "Number I've been documenting. There's a difference." Cale pulled the folder toward him, started reading. His mouth moved, but no words came out. My mother finally said, "How dare you weaponize your help like this?" I looked at her, calm now, colder than I'd ever felt. "You called it help, but to you, I was an ATM, a therapist, a guilt sponge." I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I held my ground. "You said I wasn't family?" I scanned the faces around the table. "Then maybe you won't need your fallback anymore." No one spoke. Rosine's glass tilted in her hand. Neva asked if we were still playing the game. I walked to the door, grabbing my coat. No tears, no begging, no second chances. Just me, and the storm I finally let them feel. Thunder rumbled in the distance as I stepped outside, the cold air hitting harder than I expected. The door didn't slam behind me. It clicked shut, almost polite, like even the house was too tired to argue. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Let them sit in the silence they carved. The door clicked shut behind me, but their voices bled through the walls. I didn't stop walking, not down the steps, not across the yard. My boots crunched the frost-covered grass like it owed me something. I made it halfway to the street when I heard her. "You think you're better than us?" Rosen's voice, shrill and shaking. "That folder proves you're just obsessive. Sick." I didn't turn around, but I heard the folder hit the wall inside, pages scattering like fire and dry grass. "You're a damn parasite, Avon!" she screamed. Then silence. Then Cale. "Who the hell is Lena?" That stopped me. I turned just slightly, enough to see him standing near the dining room window, the folder in his hand now. His eyes weren't just scanning. They were searching, digging. "Don't do this here," Rosen snapped, but her voice had lost its edge. I said, "Who is Lena?" Cale didn't shout. He never had to. His voice just dropped low and steady, like a threat with a tie on. My mother stood up suddenly. "This isn't the time or the place." "The hell it isn't," Cale shot back. "You all wanted honesty. You all clapped. Now we're being honest." I leaned against the mailbox and listened as my sister's perfect night unraveled. "She's a friend," Rosine muttered. Cale read another line aloud. "3 nights, Ocean View Suite, Charleston, signed under your joint account, Rosine Adams and Lena Quinn." "A friend, huh?" "She was helping me with a project." "Stop. Just stop." His voice broke, just enough for me to hear the betrayal sink in. "You lied to me, and you lied to her." I didn't need to watch the rest. I knew that tone. It was the sound of a marriage unraveling in real time. No fireworks, just the quiet crack of trust splitting open. I pulled my phone from my coat pocket, fingers trembling. Not from the cold. A new voicemail, unknown number. I pressed play. "Ms. Adams, this is Ewan from Marlowe and Fisher. Your father asked me to reach out regarding the family trust. He said you recently revoked certain authorizations. He'd like to discuss fallback options." I hung up. Another call came through immediately, same number. "Ms. Adams," Ewan said again when I answered. "Sorry to catch you like this. Your father insisted I contact you. He's under the impression that you're still listed on several fallback clauses as power of attorney." "Not anymore," I replied flatly. "I signed off. It was finalized." "Well," Ewan continued, "he claims that unless you manually update Clause 14B through a separate filing, some assets still default through you. He's asking for a meeting." I laughed. A short, sharp exhale that wasn't amused in the slightest. "Tell him I don't hold that power anymore, and even if I did, I wouldn't lift a finger." "Understood," he said. "Would you like us to notify him in writing?" "No," I said. "Let him stew." I ended the call and stared at the quiet street. A few houses down, someone had one of those plastic reindeer sets lit up. The red nose blinked on and off like it was mocking me. Behind me, the house had gone still again. Not peaceful, just stunned. I took one last look and then walked. Not because I needed air, because staying would have meant seeing their faces after the truth scorched through their lies, and I'd already spent a lifetime swallowing ash. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My breath came even, and I knew, as sure as I knew my name, that they didn't break me tonight. They just proved me right. I didn't have a destination, just distance. Distance from that house, from them, from the wreckage of what used to pass for family. I kept walking until the cold sobered the last of the adrenaline, until the sting in my chest dulled to something I could carry. Then I got in the car, started driving, not toward anything, just away. I didn't go home. Instead, I I drove without thinking, past neighborhoods still glowing with lights, through old streets where the pavement cracked in the same places it always had. My tires eventually found their way to the gravel shoulder by the lake, Dad's favorite spot back when I was too young to understand what peace actually meant. The water looked like glass under the moonlight. Not a ripple, not a breeze. Just stillness. I cut the engine and let the silence settle around me like a second skin. I used to come here when I needed clarity, before job deadlines and overdraft notices, before they learned I could be counted on for everything, and punished for the same reason. I leaned back in the driver's seat and stared at the black expanse ahead. The cold crept in through the cracked window, but I didn't roll it up. My mind didn't drift far before it landed right back on them. Not tonight, not Christmas, but every single time they asked, and I said yes. There was the time Dad called at 6:12 a.m. "Just a little help, honey. The dental work wasn't covered after all." He said it like I'd offered first. Then came Mom's bill for a card I didn't open, for items I'd never seen. "Just this once," she'd whispered, like it was a secret between friends. Rosen's emergency therapy turned out to be energy healing with a life coach in California. I wired the money without asking, thinking maybe it was real. Maybe she really was in trouble. Then came the tuition fees for Neva. "We wouldn't ask," Senna said over the phone, "but the scholarship didn't come through, and you know how tight things are." No one offered to pay anything back. No one ever asked if I could afford it. The gratitude when it came was hollow, wrapped in guilt and expectation. "Only you can help. You're the smart one. You have a good job, we don't." It always ended the same way, with my bank account lighter, my breath shorter, and my silence mistaken for consent. Once, at a birthday party for Neva, I brought a book as a gift, something I'd loved as a child. Rosine looked at it, then at me, and muttered, "I guess we all give what we can." They used to tell me I was the backbone of the family. I didn't realize they meant the one carrying all the weight until I couldn't stand upright anymore. I blinked, snapping back to the present, still gripping the steering wheel with both hands. My phone lit up again. This time it was a memory, 3 years ago. A photo of Dad in a hospital bed, looking pitiful and pale. The caption from Mom read, "We're at the ER. Don't know how long he has. Please come." I remembered flying home that day, canceling meetings, moving a project deadline, rushing straight from the airport to the hospital in heels. I'd expected machines, beeping monitors, maybe an IV. Instead, I found him watching a football game and complaining about the soup being cold. "Oh, they were just being cautious," Mom said with a wave of her hand. "Better safe than sorry, right?" Safe. Sure. I remember sitting in the waiting room afterward, staring at the vending machine and realizing that my emergency was never really their emergency. I was the emergency contact, the fixer, the backup plan, not the daughter, never the daughter. I turned off my phone and stepped out of the car, walking down the worn path to the edge of the lake. The wind cut across the water, numbing my face. I didn't care. For the first time all night, I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just done. "They never needed me," I whispered into the dark. "They needed what I could give." And I gave too much. 3 days passed like breath held too long. I barely left my apartment, except to walk the dog and pretend normalcy still lived in my building. Asheville had turned bitterly cold, the kind that cracked your skin and crept into your bones, even when wrapped in wool. The lake hadn't offered answers, but at least it hadn't asked anything of me. Then Senna texted, "Let's meet, just us, no pressure." I stared at the message longer than I should have. My first instinct was to delete it. My second was to ask, "What do you want now?" But curiosity, fool that it is, won. I chose a public place, a tiny cafe tucked on the quieter end of downtown. No risk of a scene, no audience from family, just two sisters playing pretend in a setting too cozy for confrontation. She was already there when I arrived, bundled in a cream coat, hands around a latte that had lost its steam. She looked up, eyes soft. Too soft. "I'm glad you came," she said, her voice smaller than I remembered. I sat across from her without taking off my scarf. "Let's not waste time." Senna smiled tightly. "Okay. Look, about Christmas." That wasn't what it looked like. I raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Did someone hack your voice and make you say I wasn't family?" She flinched, just slightly. It was heat of the moment. People were emotional. Rosin was pushing hard, and you went along with it, I finished. Senna didn't deny it. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope. My stomach turned. "What is that?" I asked, not bothering to hide the edge in my voice. She slid it across the table. "It's paperwork, legal stuff, power of attorney documents. Dad wants to reinstate you. We figured maybe if we handled this first, we could talk easier." I didn't touch it. "So this is what you meant by no pressure?" I said, voice flat. "Avon, we're all tired," she whispered. "You've always been the capable one. You understand how these things work. We're scared." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "You don't get to cut me out and then put me back in when it's convenient." Senna looked away. "It's not like that." I pushed the envelope back toward her. "It's exactly like that. You all clapped when Rosin made her little speech. You toasted to my absence. And now, what? You're here because Dad's scared of losing control of the trust fund?" She didn't answer. "I'm not your legal shield anymore," I said, standing, "and I'm definitely not your emotional one." I left her sitting there, staring at the untouched folder, latte, now completely cold. That night, I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed once. It was a message from Kale. "I owe you an apology. I saw what Rosin was doing for years, and I said nothing. I told myself staying quiet was neutral. It wasn't. It made it worse." Another message followed. "You weren't crazy. You were just alone." I stared at the screen, stunned. Kale had always been silent, detached. Switzerland in every family feud. But now, this? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Thank you." I typed it, then deleted it. I locked my phone and lay there, eyes tracing the cracks in the ceiling, mind running loops. The silence in the room felt louder after Kale's messages. And just as I was starting to make sense of that shift, the screen lit up again. The sun wasn't even up when my phone lit up again. Rosin. No greeting, no punctuation, just, "You've gone too far. If something happens to Mom or Dad, it's on you." I stared at the screen for a full minute, waiting for something else. Context, clarification, even a fake apology. Nothing came. Just that one line. Threat dressed as concern. A sentence so sharp it could slit guilt wide open if I let it. I didn't reply. Instead, I padded into the kitchen, flipped on the light, and poured myself a cup of coffee that tasted like metal. My hand trembled, not from fear, but from the pressure building just under my skin. By the time I placed the mug on the table, a hairline crack had already formed in the ceramic. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted a reset button. They wanted the version of me that shut up and paid up, that smiled through insults, that kept peace by erasing myself. But I was no longer that version. By 9 a.m., I'd typed out a message to the family group chat 5 different ways. Deleted every draft. None of them felt like enough. Until I hit record. My voice didn't shake this time. "I am not your villain," I said. "I am your consequence." I let that sit for a second before continuing. For years, I stayed silent because I thought keeping the family together mattered more than telling the truth. I absorbed the jabs, the manipulation, the financial sinkhole you all made out of me. I justified it in my head, told myself you were struggling, but I see it now. You weren't struggling, you were feeding off me. I paused. I won't play the scapegoat anymore, and if you try to smear me, threaten me, or twist this back on me, I will go public, with everything, every receipt, every recording, every document in that folder and more. I'm not bluffing. I ended the message and pressed send. No dramatics, just clarity. The silence that followed was almost loud. 2 hours later, my phone pinged again. It was Branwen. I didn't know it was that bad. At first, I assumed she meant someone else. Then came another message. I'm sorry for clapping. I thought it was, I don't know, a show, like it wasn't real. Then another. Rosen said if I didn't support the vote, I was choosing sides, and Mom told me you'd already decided to leave. I felt cornered. I reread those lines 3 times. It wasn't a full apology, but it was the closest thing I'd gotten in years that didn't come laced with an ask. If you want me to speak out, I will. I didn't reply. Not yet. I wasn't ready to trust her again. But something in me softened, just a notch. That night, I sat at my kitchen table alone, with nothing but my breath and the ticking of the thermostat. My hands shook, not from fear, from release, from the relief of having finally spoken, of finally being heard. I whispered it to the quiet, just to hear it out loud. Maybe I was never the quiet one. Maybe they just never listened. The next morning, I woke to silence, but it felt different. Emptier, not heavier. I moved on instinct, boxing up the pieces of a life I no longer owed anyone. There wasn't a plan, just momentum. Like once the words had left my mouth, everything else had to follow. The last box landed with a dull thud near the coat closet. I didn't bother labeling anything anymore. Just shuffled the essentials into drawers, closed the cabinets, and breathed in the blankness of the new apartment. No family portraits, no heirlooms, no framed cross-stitches saying, "Home is where the heart is." Just walls. Clean. Silent. I'd signed the lease 3 days after the blow-up and finalized every severance I could think of. New emergency contacts, no shared financial ties, legal notices filed and documented. I changed passwords, moved accounts, even scrubbed Dad's name off the trust backups they thought I wouldn't catch. I'd missed nothing this time. On the kitchen counter, folded neatly, was an old red sweater, one Mom had given me during a particularly awkward Christmas years ago. It had gold-threaded snowflakes and a little stitched tag inside that read, "Love you always." That same year, she'd called me selfish for not co-signing a loan for Tolliver. I donated it to a shelter on my way to the grocery store. My phone buzzed. I opened the family thread one last time and typed, "My number stays the same, but you'll never reach who I used to be." Then I blocked them all. Every last one. I didn't expect silence to feel like safety, but it did. For 3 days, nothing came. Then the messages started again, but this time from new numbers. The first was a photo. Their living room. The usual tree. Same placement. But there was a gaping hole where presents used to be stacked. "It doesn't feel the same without you. Neva cried all night," Senna wrote. 10 minutes later, another one. "We're behind on the mortgage. You don't care anymore, do you?" Rosin. Then Tolliver of all people. "We all said things we regret. But you went nuclear. Why would you do this to your own family?" None of them said sorry. None of them asked how I was doing. They just pointed fingers, draped in concern, as if their discomfort was my crime. I stood at my new kitchen window, the city lights dimming behind mountain fog, and let the texts pile up like junk mail I'd never open. Then I poured a glass of wine. No holiday glassware this time, just a clean tumbler, and stepped out onto the balcony. The cold didn't bother me tonight. No music played, no messages popped in. And for once, no voice inside me asked if I'd gone too far. They didn't want me healed. They wanted me manageable. And I finally understood the difference. A few nights later, the cold started to feel familiar, almost welcome. I sat on the balcony longer than usual, watching the lights from the neighboring building flicker on and off. Somewhere, a dog barked twice, and then nothing. I liked that kind of quiet, the kind where no one needed anything from me. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Lila Harmon. We hadn't spoken in over 10 years. College friends turned Facebook background noise. "Hey, sorry to ask, but are you okay? I heard you were going through something. Rosen messaged me. Said you might be in a dark place. Wanted to make sure you're safe. I didn't respond right away. I stared at the screen until it dimmed and locked. So this was her new game. I opened Messenger. Another one. And another. People I hadn't talked to in ages, some from high school, others from a job I'd left long ago. All with eerily similar messages. She said you've been isolating, that you might be overwhelmed. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. It's okay to not be okay. Each one came with a sickly sweet tone, wrapped in concern, but dipped in judgment. This wasn't worry. This was a campaign. A few hours later, the smoke turned to fire. A vague post went up on Facebook, written by a woman named Andrea, someone I'd worked with years ago on a nonprofit project, now a casual acquaintance at best. We need to talk more about mental health, especially when people lash out, cut off their families, and claim victimhood while causing chaos. It didn't name me. It didn't have to. 3 comments down, a mutual friend tagged my name. Then someone else dropped a screenshot. An out-of-context text I'd sent Senna months ago. I'm not sure I can keep doing this with them. It's exhausting. That one word, exhausting, was all they needed to spin a new story. That I was unstable, emotionally fragile, dangerous. The whispers came next, in direct messages, in subposts, in the language of polite cruelty. She used to be so sweet, now she's cold. It's the holidays. Who cuts off their family at Christmas? Maybe she needs help. Then, a comment from Aunt Faye, who hadn't spoken to me since I was a teenager. We should all just pray for her. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I opened my laptop instead and started drafting a public response. Something sharp, articulate, laced with proof. But halfway through, I stopped typing. What was the point? They weren't looking for answers. They were just looking for control. So I called my lawyer. By the end of the day, Rosen received a formal cease and desist notice. Attached were screenshots, message logs, and a warning that any further defamation would be met with legal consequences. No more phone calls, no more folder drops. This time, I spoke in their language. That night, as the final email was sent, I whispered to myself, "You're not winning. You're gasping." And the silence that followed? It told me she heard. The silence didn't last long. 2 days after I sent the cease and desist, there was a knock at my door. 3 sharp raps, followed by nothing. I wasn't expecting anyone. I checked the peephole, heart tightening. It was Branwen. She stood there with a duffel bag slung over her shoulder and a tote that looked like it had been hastily packed. Her face was blotchy, eyes swollen, mascara smudged. No smile, just exhaustion. "I'm sorry for showing up like this," she said as I opened the door. I stepped aside without asking. She walked in slowly, like her limbs were heavy. I didn't speak, not yet. I just waited. She stood in the middle of my living room for a moment, then finally whispered, "I can't stay with them anymore. It's poisoned, all of it." I nodded once, then locked the door behind her. We sat down side by side on the couch, like old friends who forgot how to start over. It was a long time before she spoke again. "I should have said something sooner," Branwen murmured. "But after I messaged you, Rosen found out." I looked at her, my chest tightening. "She cornered me in the kitchen," she continued, her voice shaking. "Said if I ever contacted you again, she'd cut me off completely. Told me I was choosing a traitor. Then Mom chimed in. Said loyalty meant silence." Branwen paused, eyes glassy. I don't think I ever realized how deep it went. The control. The fear. "Yeah," I said softly. "It's easy not to see it until you're the target." She looked at me then. Really looked. "Cale left. He's staying at a friend's place. He told me Rosen tried to push him to write a statement about your mental instability. He refused." My throat burned. Branwen reached into her bag and handed me a folded piece of paper. A printed email. A full thread of messages. From Senna. From Rosen. Each one nastier than the last. Gaslighting, threats, manipulation. "You were right," she said. "About everything. And I'm done pretending too." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear those words until they left her lips. Later that night, another message came in from Rosen. You turned her against us. Just like you poisoned everything. I didn't hesitate. You did that all by yourself. Then I blocked her. Phone, email, every platform. I opened a document I'd been sitting on for weeks. A formal affidavit in support of Cale's divorce filing. I signed it, scanned it, sent it to his lawyer. Done. Branwen and I sat on the balcony that evening, the sky bruised with January cold. I brought her a blanket. She didn't thank me with words, just tucked it around herself and leaned back in the chair beside mine. We didn't talk. We didn't need to, because for the first time, the silence between us didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like peace. You're safe here, I said after a while. For real this time. She nodded, exhaling slow, and I realized quietly that maybe I was safe too. 2 weeks later, I found the letter in my mailbox, tucked between a utilities bill and a coupon booklet. No return address, just my name, handwritten in a familiar, tilted script that stopped me cold. I stood there on the steps outside my building, fingers tightening around the envelope. My first instinct was to toss it. Trash can was only 6 steps away. But something in me said, read it, not for them, for me. I walked upstairs, placed it on the counter, stared at it for an hour while the tea water cooled. Then I sat, opened the flap carefully, and unfolded the first page. We miss you, every day. No apology, no admission, just that line, scripted in my mother's loopy cursive. Page 2. Your father hasn't been well. His breathing's gotten worse. And Neva, she keeps asking when you're coming back. She drew you a picture. A pang, not a sharp one, just the kind that brushes against old bruises. Then the third page. We might lose the house. The mortgage is too far behind. We just need a little help. After that, we'll never ask again. Please, Alvin. That line, we'll never ask again, was underlined twice. I read all 3 pages once more. Then I folded them up, stood, and carried the letter outside. On the balcony, I pulled out the ceramic bowl I used to keep succulents in, set the letter inside, lit a match. The paper curled fast, black edges folding in on themselves, ink bleeding into orange flame. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel sad. I watched the smoke rise, soft and thin, vanishing into the sky, and whispered, I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. There was something final in that moment. Not like slamming a door, more like taking the key off your ring and tossing it into a river. Later that night, I found an old emergency contact form I'd left half-filled in a drawer. I pulled it out, crossed off every old name, wrote in my own, me, finally, me. A few days after that, Branwen asked me if I could walk Neva to school. She had a shift and didn't want to leave her daughter with a sitter. I agreed without thinking. It wasn't an obligation. It was a choice. Neva held my hand the whole walk, skipping every third step. When we got to the gate, she looked up at me with that soft, curious stare only kids can manage. Will I see you at my birthday? She asked. I smiled, crouching down so we were eye level. Only if I'm invited. She nodded, then ran toward her class. I stood there for a minute, just watching her disappear into a crowd of color and chatter. When I turned to head home, the clouds were finally breaking, sunlight threading through the gray, slow, and golden. And for once, the end didn't feel like a collapse. It felt like a clearing. Maybe you've been the one keeping it all together. Maybe you've stayed silent to keep the peace, until you realized the silence was costing you your peace. For years, I thought love meant sacrifice. That being the strong one meant absorbing every blow, cleaning up every mess, carrying the weight without ever asking for help. But here's what I learned. Being strong isn't about how much you can endure. It's about knowing when enough is enough. It's about choosing yourself, without apology. Sometimes family won't understand your boundaries. because they were the ones who benefited from you not having any. And when you finally draw that line, they'll call it betrayal. But it's not. It's healing. I don't share this story to be dramatic. I share it for anyone who's ever felt guilty for walking away, for saying no, for protecting their peace. You are not selfish for outgrowing dysfunction. You are not heartless for demanding respect. And you are not alone. So, let me ask you, have you ever had to choose between peace and people? Between protecting your boundaries and preserving a relationship? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Just type 1 if this story hit home, or let me know what city or state you're watching from. I read every comment, seriously. And if this video gave you something to think about, maybe strength, maybe a little clarity, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. Because trust me, you're not the only one rebuilding, and you deserve to write your next chapter your way.